Considering the product itself, is it sellable to these countries? Is it needed in these countries? Is it correctly packaged? What are the logistical issues which might arise? Because if you send it to the neighboring country, that's one kind of packaging. If you send it overseas, then it's a total different ball game. Then again, you have to look at the personnel, as I said. You have to have some people who are dedicated and doing it 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. And quite often export is done after hours because of the either time differences or urgent needs of something. You have to be ready all the time. I've told to my colleagues and my friends sometimes that being an export manager means that you actually have to have a packed suitcase next to your office table in order to be able to react quickly to the urgent request to go somewhere and solve some kind of issues, and to be ready to fly out in few hours from your office. And then third, of course, you have to think about your production capabilities, because in Estonia is a small market, for example, and when you are planning to do the export to the bigger countries, let's take, for example, Germany, then quite often your production capabilities might not respond to the need, because the minimum quantities in these countries, if you talk about real physical products, might be so big that you are not able to deliver as much as is requested by the partner. You simply can't start with sending few pallets of goods and try to raise it up. Sometimes you have to be ready to ship it out already in quite big quantities, of course, after all the sampling and the deals have been made. The product itself, quite often the same product which you sell in your local market is not the product you can sell without some kind of adjustments to the foreign markets. That brings you to the market research, which has to be done then when you have selected the market. And then basically every single market, if you talk about your neighboring countries, in our case, I have had points that there are different needs even for our closest neighbors. Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Russia, every single market can have their own requirements, different certificate needs. All these type of things have to be considered. The packaging, if you're talking about B2C type of consumer products, that's the most difficult part, because when you go to the consumer market directly, then there is a whole long list of things you have to consider, because the packaging to the market has to be, again, different to the different markets. You can't sell the same wrapper around something, or even the transportation package can be different for different markets. So you have to consider that. As I said, you have to have people who are ready to do the job, who have the needed qualifications, who are ready to travel, and who know the market in the end of the day. So you have to invest a lot in people. Maybe first of all, of course, the best thing is if the person speaks the language of the country you're going to. Nowadays, yes, mostly you can manage in English, but even in Europe, when you go to the markets like France, it can be a showstopper when you don't speak French. I have had this experience with some companies. It took me 3 years to persuade somebody to start the business, and the change finally came when actually the purchasing manager changed in the company, because the previous one didn't speak English, and the conversation via the translator was simply not good enough. And then when the person changed and I found the person who could speak English, in the end of the day, we started the business in a few months. So this is also needs to be considered. And then, of course, the financial part, you have to be ready to do the foreign transactions. Sometimes it's not the direct money transfers. You have to be ready to deal with the banks, bank guarantees, different type of payment methods, prepayments type of things. These all things have to be considered before you even can start. Every single country or market can have a different requirements, and then of course it makes more sense to go find a partner first or find a customer first, test and speak to him, show him the product, get the response, get the feedback, about the product itself, and then the local certificate requirements. And then sometimes it can take months, maybe sometimes even years when it's a bureaucratic type of country, like we have many of these, and then start the whole process, because it's also cost. Getting some certificates can be very costly, and when you start from the certificates, you prepare everything based on some knowledge got from internet, for example, and then you go to the market and you find that there is actually no need for such a product. Then you have done a lot of work which doesn't bring you any fruits in the end of the day. Very much regulated countries are, for example, Germany. Very bureaucratic countries, of course, are Balkan countries. In Balkan countries, it's mostly, you have to find the right person and right connections first. You might have every single certificate you need, but you don't have a well-connected person in the other end who will be your partner or who will be the mediator, then it won't help. For example, with the automotive industry, which is in itself, it's very regulated, and vehicle in the traffic is the kind of source of danger by itself, and the automotive industry is very much regulated by different type of certificates and requirements which come out first of all from the worldwide safety regulations, and then on top of that you have your own country regulations. Sometimes you won't be even able to start exporting unless you don't have a company registered in this country which have the majority. So you have to study all these type of things before you will be able to start the real business. Of course, there are countries with less bureaucracy. You can have some certificates actually for free in some cases. And then in the other end, getting a certificate is a process which requires sending some samples, filling out some paperwork, and there is actually even the price, the stately established price, which can be thousands of euros. So you have to be ready for that. I would say no. Otherwise, it goes to the gray area of business, and that is not something which is long-term. You can make a one-time deal off, and that's the end of the business, because nowadays everybody is connected. This comes out very quickly if you don't have all the needed paperwork fixed when the business starts. First of all, you have to find out how the bank transfers work. Is there a bank which is connected to your bank in your country? Sometimes you need to have open an extra account in a different bank which has the relationship with the corresponding bank in the target market. Then the second point is that the payment times in export business might be 3 times longer than in your home country. It's not an exception when they ask for a payment time of 90 days or something like that. And you have to have these buffers ready for yourself, so you will send out the goods. The transportation itself can take sometimes weeks or even more. And then when the goods have arrived, it takes another 3 months for money to arrive, and depending on the deal you do, sometimes the money even arrives only then when the goods are sold from the local warehouse. So the payment times can be very, very long, and not just the contractual 30 days or 90 days, it can be even longer due to the different ways of making the contracts and contract conditions. That is definitely something you have to consider. The best way would be if you can do the business based on the prepayment basis, but on the long term it will never work. It might work for the first testing period, so to make sure that your partner is right, the market is right, the goods are actually selling, and then after that most probably your local partner or distributor will tell you that we have tested it, you have proved that it works, I'm a reliable partner, and then they will probably come back to the business terms and the payment terms. So I have not seen the business working only on a prepayment basis. Basically, it comes to the payment times in the end anyway. I have seen different cases of who will be responsible for the export. Very often it starts out with that the owner of a company or the general manager of a company is the one who initiates the process, makes the first contacts when you're talking about the smaller type of company, medium-sized company. But very soon this process has to be changed, and the dedicated export manager must be appointed, because company owner or manager has 100 more things to do on his everyday working day, and in the end of the day he will not be able to respond to all the market changes, especially when you go out already for several export markets. Then it's definitely you need a person or a team who will be responsible for these type of things 8 hours a week, and these people of course have to be selected on the basis either they know the market very well, they must definitely have some kind of experience of doing business overseas and abroad, and of course the language skills and the people's presence in this market is absolutely necessary. Export can't be done over the Skype or emails. Nowadays, of course, communication channels are endless, but nothing replaces the human contact. And when you start relying only on emails, very soon you will notice that the sales are not proceeding, something is wrong, and the business will go downhill. So you have to visit these markets, and these people you deal with at least few times a year. And as I like to say always, business is done by people, not by the companies. You might have the best product in the world, but it will not sell if you don't have the good connection and the relationship with your partners on a personal level. I was about to say that there is probably no such thing as an ideal export manager, because as I said, usually the export is done not only in one export market. As soon you take one, you will have a need or eagerness to go on, and the person who is responsible for export markets, in ideal case, of course, has been in this country before. He might have or should have some kind of internal network, because even though you find a good partner in the country, quite often you need to verify everything what is told from the other end, because when this partner is your only source of information from this country, it might lead to the situation that there is some kind of hidden agenda somewhere, and in one day suddenly you realize that somebody has overtaken your business, or your own manager has established his own company on the side, and the business is ending with this. So you have to have the local network or a secondary source of information from this market. The export manager has to have a very open mind, in the sense that he has to be a very good communicator. He has to have lots of topics for a small talk. The person has to know about this market much more than just your business sector. He has to know the local cultural habits. He has to know something about the local policies, the local political situation. It will be great if he even knows about the biggest sports events in this country, because you always constantly need topics to speak about. And as I mentioned, in the end of the day, you must be able to become a good friend, personal friend of this guy. A good example is that when we started the business in Czech Republic, I found this partner with whom I met quite often, and sometimes I just went to visit him during the vacation time. We went to his summer house. I helped to build a fireplace for him, and we didn't talk about the business at all. We talked about different type of things in life, and in 2 weeks the biggest order of the year arrived, me without even asking for it. So you have to have this very good relationship, and it's all based on the good communication skills, knowing the market much broader than just your field of expertise, and of course, ideally, this person speaks the language of the local country. So then the possibilities to get the information and speak with different type of people are much broader, and you have the set of information which you can rely on and make the right decisions in the end of the day. Responsibilities as an export manager, first of all, you have to keep track on everything what goes on. You have to be on top of the game all the time, meaning that you respond very quickly to all the requests. You do your homework. You have to be a contact person between the partner company and your company, because you are the entry information exchange point in the company, and you have to minimize all the unnecessary discussions between the buyer and, for example, your production manager. You have to be the guy who knows sometimes a little bit more, but you have to deliver the right messages. Sometimes you have to be a good diplomat in order to deliver the right way of saying things. Because again, due to the different cultural backgrounds and different markets, you can't be sometimes straightforward honest. You have to deliver the message which is right, and you have to do it in a very diplomatic way in order not to make somebody angry in the other end. Then of course you have to know your company and your product very well. You have to make it as easy as possible to sell the goods for the partner, not let him to discover the ways, what's the best way to sell it. You have to provide him all the supporting materials, starting from the product descriptions, the value offer, the marketing materials, and then of course the marketing materials have to be adjusted according to the different markets, because you can't use the same leaflet you use in your home market or in other market for the third one. So you have to be prepared to make it as easy as possible, and then the product is you find out in the end of the day that the product is selling. If it's difficult to sell, they will probably sell something else rather than your product, because probably he has somebody behind his door knocking and waiting to have his chance to replace your goods or your services with somebody else. I would say it would be the best if you are the one who is responsible for taking in the orders and then controlling all the payment parts, and even if somebody is late to the payments, then you will be the mediatory in between, because when your company's financial director starts to send letters to somebody, then something is already wrong. Either you have missed something, or something is wrong with the company or your partner company, and that means that you are late. So I would suggest that you must control everything, but of course you have to speak within your company all the things clear, because when sometimes the payment is late and your financial manager gets anxious and angry, then you must have the explanation to him first before he starts taking contact and reacting, and usually these people react very harshly, and that is not the good thing. If we talk about the resellers network, then we talk about different markets, and that's very important to make these different markets work together. I have tried to do it first in a way that I try to keep the different markets separately, not to let them communicate between each other, because you might have different price levels, you might have different type of developments done in different countries, and you think that no, it's good when he doesn't know about it, because then he will ask the same things from you, and then you have to lower the price or change the product. But at the end of the day, what I have found out that the best thing you can do is actually make this network of your resellers your team. This will actually be your team. And yes, you have your own team in your own company, but your actual team are the resellers in the different countries. And I created this type of network of resellers. I arranged 2 times a year, I arranged the meetings where we gathered together in different places in the world. We actually made it kind of like Olympic Games, like these meetings were in different cities every single time. Everybody could be a host. Everybody could show their production, their activities, their country. And that makes them more involved, more committed, and that's not the bad thing when they start talking to each other. We were not forced, but we found out that it's even good to make their own Facebook and LinkedIn groups where they could exchange ideas. And in the end of the day, the idea which comes from one market will be the deal breaker in another country. So this actually, the whole product development moved into this network of reseller meetings. And from there, we got the new ideas, how to develop the product, how to go on with the market development. And all these ideas ended up in our development department at the end of the day. And of course, I soon figured out that I have to involve my development manager also in these meetings, because that was the biggest pot of ideas he could get in order to be successful in the product development. Very often this export business is related to your personality, and you are the face for your partners, your company face. In order to avoid it, first of all, is to have a proper documentation and proper CRM type of solutions where everything is documented. So not that all the information is in the head of this one person, your export manager, because when he leaves, you will have empty hands in the end of the day. So first of all, it has to be well documented. Second of all, it would be good to have a proper reporting put in place, regular reporting to your management. Some type of plans have to be made, and the fulfillment of the plans have to be controlled by the management, meaning the managers of the export manager. So there will be a traceable track. And when you have these type of things in order, then anything can happen. Either the person gets sick, got hit by the car, has to move by family reasons, there might be thousands of things, then you are protected against it somehow. It depends on the size of your company and the size of your resellers network. Yes, it has been said that one person can't handle more than 5 markets at a time. And then when your export markets are bigger already than 5, then most probably it makes sense to divide these markets between different people. First of all, the expertise will be better. They can concentrate on this region of markets, for example. In my case from one company, I remember that I divided the whole export markets, I had more than 20 in this time, to 3 regions. And I actually appointed some of my assistants to be specialists on these specific regions. That is one way of doing it. But of course, when you're a small company and you deal with only few 2-3 markets, then most probably it doesn't make sense to divide this work between many people. Then, as I said, you have the synergy coming from different markets, and you hear something from one market, you can apply it to another one. So unless it's less than 5, I would say you have to take this risk, trust in the right person, pick the right person first, and then go with it. But when it goes bigger than 5 and it reaches already 10 or more, then it makes sense to have a bigger team to cover all these markets. It's easier for you if you have a very good relationships with your purchasing, production, and quality managers. It means that everybody is involved. They know the reasons why you sometimes come back from your business trip and you put on the table that, you know, guys, now we have to totally change the whole concept of this product or the service, because one of our main markets, maybe it makes 30% of your all total sales, is requiring changes. And if you just put them in front of the guys and say, now you have to make this change, and yesterday it has to be done, then most probably you will get resistance from them. So be open to them, talk to them, not even during the official meetings, but during your everyday meetings in the corridors or somewhere else. Talk about the new great ideas which you have heard. Talk about the experiences which you have seen. take them with you. Sometimes it's good when you actually bring them with you to some meetings, to these reseller network meetings. Maybe they don't have to have a speech there or be a rock star on stage, but then they hear it, and then they can understand why these type of requests are coming. And that helps a lot in your internal communication. And as I said, the product development guy is your number one partner in export business. He has to be your wingman. He has to be next to you all the time. And due to that, me and my development managers in my previous companies have been my best buddies and travel companions all the time. It's good when you know, first of all, that you know from which type of materials your product is made of and from where the material comes from. Because quite often this is the question from your partners, and you have to know that. So that's why you have to have some kind of relationship with him as well. Very often it's a crucial that, or it can be even your most important sales point, when you can tell them that, you know, all the competitors in this market are making it, let's say, from Chinese raw material, but we are doing from Swedish raw material. And that might be your best sales point in the end of the day, so you have to know it. From the point of view of having the needed stock always ready, then that's a question of company readiness to be and the effectiveness and what's the call, the balance of how well the company can do the planning and how well you can foresee these upcoming events, and then together with them plan that beforehand, that whenever I can see that there is a raise in the second quarter of the month or a year, then you are ready for that, and you don't have to start jumping up and down, and now you need to order an extra quantity of materials because suddenly the order came. Yes, sometimes it might happen, but when you have a good planning done, then please share this, your insight and forecasts with your purchasing manager, so he knows accordingly to plan it and then have the warehouse ready for the market raises or declines. It can be also that your local people in distributors can tell you that, for example, we have seasonal goods. Then you have to know where are the peaks of the season and when are the lower times, so he has to know that. I would say it's a question of how much risks your company can take on him, and how well everything goes. Nowadays, markets are changing quite rapidly. Things happen either due to the political reasons or some your partner economical reasons. You have to be ready for that, and there is not very much you can do if the plans are changed suddenly. But when you have made the contracts and you have agreed some kind of quantities in this contract, then this must be guaranteed. And if something changes, yes, maybe you can have some clauses in your contracts which can minimize the risks, then that at least you don't suffer financially in the end. And if these raw materials, for example, are not very long lasting, they have to be realized in certain time, then of course you have to protect yourself with this type of clauses in your contract, that if the agreed quantities are not ordered, then there should be some consequences. Paying penalties is never a good thing. Usually these type of clauses will be renegotiated. That has been my experience. And of course, but they still have to be there, and if you see that this is not the first time the order is cancelled and it's the process which has happened already before, then you probably are forced to apply them, and in the end of the day, that means that if you're already applying this type of penalty clauses, that means that you actually have to start looking for another next partner, because that's the sign of danger. Definitely quality is one of the key issues. When you have promised something to the customer, you have to live and keep up your promises, and then the quality manager is your guy who is the one who is responsible for that, because you are not in a workshop and you are not doing it yourself. So he has to be your connection person. In here also, this type of quality certificates as ISO, for example, are very helpful, which first of all, give you the guarantee that the products are always made according to the certain procedures. And that's also, again, a good sales point for your partners, that these type of certificates can make the sales easier, and that they are the proof that you are able to deliver the required quality constantly, and this is not going up and down. So quality is definitely one issue to look at, but ideally it should run in the background. You don't have to deal with that on a daily basis. It will come up very quickly, actually, when you are playing with the quality, meaning that, for example, if you try to make the first samples better than your actual everyday production line can produce, it will come out with your first delivery, basically. And I can't say there is some kind of a number which is set, that if you go below it, then it's really bad. Different markets, as I said, different markets deliver different quality levels. You can even produce one thing in different quality levels, but this has to be agreed. And if you go below it, then you're probably violating some contractual obligations which you have taken, and that's the breach of the contract. So it's as easy as that. So it's not the question of I didn't know it, or that was an accident. This is the breach of the contract, and then it's either you can prove to your partner that you can raise the quality to the required level and go on, or if you can't do that, that's the end of this business, at least from my point of view. This is a kind of thing which I have always done this way, that I have opened basically every single door in my house, in my office, in my company, to show to the partners how the things are going. Again, that builds a trust for them, that gives them more objectives and more knowledge how the products are made. That will help him a lot in his everyday sales work in the target market, and that will also help him to make it clear understanding how the process within your company goes. Then you don't have to start explaining every time something goes wrong, what is wrong. Then he actually knows the process, and he can already ask from you the question, is that thing what happened, and maybe we can I know how to solve it somehow. He can be the part of your team. So I would just open your doors, show them your people, show them your production, tell them how everything goes, and in the end of the day, that helps much more rather than hiding how you do actually sell them. Of course, you can't reveal your own technology secrets in the very ones which are patented or which is your key strength, but on the level which you can do that, please do it. This has to be in a kind of agreed company policy in your house already, that how much can we reveal either the technology secrets or some kind of tricks which make your product different from the competitors. But as I said, in other point of view, you have to reveal something, and to be able to prove that your product and your production process is better than somebody else. And that's the only way you can prove it, because one picture is worth more than 100 words. And that's the good saying which applies also in here. Still, you have to have a right person to do the job of export. The person who goes out and represents your company is the face of your whole company. And if this person is not right person, then you might have the best product in the world. You won't be successful. All the rest, you can update your product, you can update your quality, you can learn the language, but the personality of the product export manager is definitely one of the key ingredients in this mix of list what should be done before you start exporting. No, I would say your playground, your home market has to be well in order, because that's basically the place where you test all your new things, that's where you get your first experiences, the place where you get the first responses. Of course, there are companies who are located in for example, your country, but they come up with a product specially designed for the export markets only. Might be no market for your own country, then it's a different story. But most often, your home market is your test market, and when you have everything ready, and of course the financial also come from there. You can't start the business only based on bank loan basis, that I was able to get $1 million from the bank, and now let's go and sell everywhere else. So it most probably will burn this money very quickly if you don't have the experience from somewhere else. Structure, company product base. You have to be able to understand the product, to whom is it made for, who can be your potential target market, who are your customers, and what kind of resources do you have in your hand to be able to go somewhere out. What are the production capabilities? What are the technological capabilities in order to be able to change if it's needed, because most probably you have to change something in your product or in the design of the product or the packaging. You have to change, and you must be sure that it can be done. And you, as I said earlier, it could be best if you can start with trying to sell it in your home market, the same product. Go out with your local sales manager, be his shadow, and try to understand how it is done. What are the key values, key selling points, and then build from there that pace. Of course, then comes the question of which market to go, but that's the next story again. But you have to really know your product. You have to be able to shoot the sales pitch as an elevator pitch in few seconds. And second of all, you have to be able to explain to the customer how does it work, why it's the best product in the market, and stuff like that. So this has to be your mantra, which has to come out automatically. Hello. Hello, do you hear me now? Okay. Is it better now? Hello, is it better now? So some of you hear me, some of you don't. I assume it is the matter of
connection of the internet. Because if somebody hears me, that means that actually the feed of the voice goes through. Okay, I see lots of yes, better, yes, okays. That's good. So I'm Sven Aulik. As you probably saw me for the last 40 minutes already, and I assume that you will also have some questions. The thing is that I can take the questions via the chat, and I think that's the best way to do it. Or if somebody has a longer story, then you should be able to ask for a conversation, and then I will allow it to hear by everybody. Did you get me? Did you understand me? There must be 52 people online at the moment, and as I said, the little window should pop up on my screen if somebody wants to ask some questions by voice. But of course, I can see also your chat window, so you can also ask the questions via the chat window if you don't find a way how to do it via voice. There was a question about each market. I have been working in the different markets, and one of them, if you can see the slide on the screen, as the two last ones, the companies called Fleet and GoSwift, they were both IT companies where I was the expert managers. And yes, also in the IT market, the principle is still the same. You have to find a local partner, and this everyday business setup operations have to be done the same way as you sell cars or clothes or food. One moment, we will try to put my face on a bigger screen, if possible.
Slaide. taha pane endal kinni. Miks? Või ükskõik, aga tule siia, proovi siit tagant. Pane enda juhe siia, heli pane siia. Mida? Pane see heli siia, vaheta ära. No. Mida? Okei.
Hello, do you hear me now? Yes. I changed the computer. I'm in a other computer, and yes, there will be no subtitles for this part of you because we don't have this capability in this click meeting solution. And if I look at the questions now, there is a question about the Asian markets. What is my experience? I have been dealing in countries like India, in Bahrain, and also in the Emirates. And the question of the right partner is even more important in these countries, because in these countries there is, as you probably know, there is no democracy. You can do only the business in a way where you have to have a partner who has good connections and the right connections, especially in Middle East, where your partner has to know the people close to the royal families. That's the best way you can secure that your deals are going through and your sales are going well. The next question is about the certificates. It depends on what type of products or services are you selling. If it's the
classical example of the food products, then of course with the food products you need a lot of different certificates, and they are, as I mentioned in the beginning, they can be very different in every different country. So every country can have their own regulations, and the price level of different certificates can vary from one to 1 million, basically. So it's the really specific question. It's difficult to reply if I don't know exactly what they're talking about. And of course, I have not been exporting every single thing in the world. So is there any other questions? I'm just trying to understand how can you ask questions with a voice, but I don't find these options in here. Okay, it seems like let's try one thing. Olga Parhomenko has asked about the questions. And if I now activate you, if Olga has a microphone, she can ask me a question. And now Mitro is trying to also ask question. Olga, do you hear me, and do you have a microphone? I assume Olga doesn't have a microphone.
I hear you.
Okay, you hear me. I hear you too now.
Yeah. Okay. About IT certificates. Do our specialists need certificates to show expertise or some request? How does it work?
With the IT, there is no need for the special certificates for you as a person. Your product has to be good enough, and of course, when in some cases in IT world, when you deal with, for example, I was working in a company, EcoFleet, where we were working with the GPS tracking devices. Then these tracking devices, which were installed in the vehicles, they needed to be certified by the local authorities as the mobile devices allowed in this country, because they have a GPS and GSM modules inside and SIM cards. So that you have to be sure that these devices are certified in these countries where you start using them. But as an IT platform itself, you don't need any certificates, at least on my experience.
Okay, thank you. So I see. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to ask the question? Please just I try to write in the chat window that I would like to ask a question. If you don't want to type it in, and then I can activate you. Okay. One moment. There are lots of questions. I can't keep track. Ivan has asked the question: how we can find the buyers and partners abroad? I will show you some slides. Okay. First, of course, I was mentioning during my video that first, of course, you have to cover the market and do the market research. As I have written on a slide, please, of course, we always use the Google, and in the foreign countries also use the Google Translate, meaning that if you're looking for something, don't use the English titles only and English words. Try to use the English word, translate into the language of the country where you would like to go, and then do the Google search. Then it helps a lot to find the right companies on the internet. And whenever you have found this probable list of the countries, and not countries, but companies you would like to visit, and you think that they might be suitable, you have to contact them, and then you have to do the so-called roadshow, as I have put there, and visit them all. Because based on the internet and this first-hand information, it's very difficult to decide if it's the right partner or not. So you actually have to physically go to this country and visit all of these country companies, and based on that, make the final decision. And the next slide actually shows you one part of the business trip I did to the country called Slovakia, and that's a meeting plan for one day. So I had to have a meeting at 10 o'clock with one company, at 1 o'clock another company, 6 o'clock another company, and that was a good story that I started to put them on place. And after that, I thought that, okay, how far are these companies from each other, because they were in different cities. And I put them in a map, and now you can see the map. So it meant that I had to travel over 900 kilometers during one day to have these 3 meetings. So this is an example how to actually check them out. But in the end, I managed to do all these meetings, and I picked one company out of them who became my partner in Slovakia. Okay. Then the question from Farboard. Hello, we have a product to export, but how do you find the right customer in the right market for the product? How to find the profitable market? That's a very good question. What I would always start with that, depending on what product we have. If it's the B2B product, then of course you can do the direct export, shipping out from Ukraine directly to this country, to this customer, which is one way. But if there are more possible customers than there's just one, to find the local partner. And in order to find this local partner, of course, you have to do this traveling and finding this right partner who will do the local sales for you. Then he will become your reseller or distributor in this country. How to check the reliability of the partner? There are multiple ways. First, of course, you have to be able to find the possibility to check their track record in their country business registers. That do they pay their taxes, for example, and are they listed in list of the Chamber of Commerce, for example? And these type of things always help you to give you some information. Are they reliable partners or not so reliable ones? But in the end of the day, you still have to meet them, visit with them, and try to do the first little business deals, starting from small ones, and get the proof that they are able to sell it on his market. Do you know some platforms for sellers like Alibaba or Amazon for B2B? Ivan asks me the question. There are very many different platforms. But now it depends on what kind of goods you have, and these platforms are more like the internet shops. But then you have to use it as a eBay type of thing. Alibaba and Amazon are kind of a eBay, or you can put your things up on the big ones platforms like Alibaba or Amazon. Yes, but then it has to be a very good marketing somehow in order to be visible, because there are millions and millions of different stuff on these platforms. So it's difficult. But for B2B, to be honest, I have not used platforms for B2B. Maybe it sounds a little bit old school, but I have done it always via the local partners, because of the nature of the products which I have been dealing with. So is there any more questions? I'm typing now as a Kati, so actually it's me who's is writing the questions. And as I mentioned, if somebody asks a question with voice, just write it in the chat box, and then I will activate the voice for you, because I can't activate everybody at the same time. Can you show the first slide again? You mean this one or this one? Katerina, is it that one? Good. Okay, this is the third slide. Julia asked the questions, is it easier to sell to the neighboring countries? It's definitely easier, because you probably know much more about your neighbors. You might even know their language. You have probably been in this country before, and you can easily check out how is the competition, what are your competitors' products, what are their prices, if they are the consumer goods. If your business is B2B, then of course you need this network of your friends or your other sources of information who can help you to check it out, how the things are done in this country. Maybe I have used the possibility to use my friend in this target market country, that they will pretend to be a possible customer and call into the company and check out the prices for me in the local language. Then they don't suspect that some of the competitors is asking the question. Mitro asked the question about the building materials. I'm not been in the building materials. If you look at my CV, there is a company called MS Group, where I was a chairman of the board. That company produced garage doors and stuff like that, but not the everyday building materials as a wooden boards or cement or paints or something like that. I don't have this practical experience myself.
Somebody started to write something, but okay, Tanya showed up. Can you please share the biggest challenge from your experience? The biggest challenge. There have been many challenges. Maybe one of the biggest challenges, I told the story in the video about the French market, because French market is very special in a way that they are very protective. They would always prefer their own products to the imported products. The same actually applies for Scandinavia. In Scandinavia also, for example, the Swedish people, although your product can be 2 times cheaper, they still buy from the guy they have been doing business for the last 5 or 10 years because they trust him more rather than somebody they don't know. But coming back to the French story, was that I was trying to sell the seatbelts to the Renault truck company, the truck company who produces buses and trucks. And I met the purchasing director of Renault Trucks for 3 years. I was visiting their factory in Lyon. I was visiting 2 or 3 trade fairs during the year where they were exhibiting. And as mentioned, because the purchasing director didn't speak English and my French is not as good, so I can speak French. I always had to use the translator, and it was very, very difficult. And the story ended with this, that the guy left his position, somebody else came in who spoke English, and then it took 2 months, and then we signed the contract. So there is how to overcome it. It's always, you have to be creative. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. So there is nothing you can do because it's the foreign country with foreign habits, and you can't change either the people yourself, or you can't change the way of they are used to do the business. So it's, you have to find it out, what is the real reason they don't want to make a deal with you. And if you can overcome these conditions which they tell has to be done, then you can do the business. If don't, I'm very sorry, then you will have the deal. Question from Julia: how should I start to find a partner? From exhibitions, searching the internet, possible dealers. I would say it's a combination. Of course, first you have to start with internet, just to get some kind of a picture about the country, about the possible competitors. Nowadays, internet is full of different information, but as soon you have done your homework in internet-based sources, then it's always good to visit some exhibitions, as you have written in there, because in exhibitions you have your sector companies, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are present. You will see what kind of products are they selling. You can always ask the prices, because in the exhibitions they will always tell you about the price levels, and you will see how these products are different, how are they packaged, and all these type of things. So you can't do the business over the internet or over the phone. Over the internet or phone, you can only agree about some meetings, but you can't do the final sales. Of course, depending on the product, but it's almost impossible in my experience. Is there any insurance practice when transporting goods that quickly deteriorate, since there are weather conditions in the parts parties cannot influence? Yes, all the transport companies are able to issue to you some insurances. and you can even buy the insurances separately, but there is the minimal kind of insurance are always provided by the logistical companies. It can differ from country to country, but there is a minimum amount which they always guarantee. If they expose your goods to the rain or to the wet conditions or extreme heat, then this is their problem, that they have damaged your goods and they must compensate something for it. But it's always good to have extra insurance, and one way to do it is actually these Incoterms. If you have heard about the word Incoterms, I will write it down in here. Incoterms. Incoterms is the way of agreeing how the goods are delivered and who is responsible from which point. You can sell the goods so that the responsibility goes over to the buyer the moment you load your goods on a truck in your country or in your factory even, or the responsibility goes over to the buyer on the border, or the responsibility goes over to the buyer in the final destination. So these are all possible to find in Incoterms. If you put into the internet the word Incoterms, you will find all these conditions, and then it's up to the contract which you make with the company, that if you are able to sell it in a way that it's called X works, which means that the responsibility goes over to them right at the moment the goods exit your factory or your company gate or door, then of course that's the best possible way if you can agree about them. But it's always a matter of negotiations. If you could give only one advice to the beginner in export, what would you do? I think you should first of all be sure that your product is needed in some other countries as well. You begin with that, and then you have to do a lot of homework. You can never rely on that you will find somebody who will just start selling it and don't ask any questions. You have to go to visit this market regularly, not just to agree about the first contract, but after that regularly, a couple of times a year, you have to go there to have to speak with your partners or the customers, even with the end customers, to find out how to improve your product. Maybe you can do something differently in order to make some changes. So it's lots of homework at home in the internet, but it also has to include the knowledge of the market, and this you can only get when you go to this country and look around. And for that, it's good to have some local friends, some network of people who are not maybe directly your partners, but they are also some other people you might know via some kind of a networking organizations. There are lots of them. I know in Ukraine, for example, is the organization called JCI, which I'm also a member. I think there is a slide about it. No, this is not that. This is a slide about how to get these connections in other countries. There are some lots of international organizations, students or young people. Then there's an organization called JCI, which is very strong in Ukraine. I have lots of friends in Ukraine via the JCI. And of course, there is a roundtable, Rotaries, and these type of organizations. If you are a member in your country, then the chapters in the other countries can always help you. And there are networking organizations like Business Network International or Meetup, you can always go to their meetings and get to know people in there. What was my biggest fail? One of the good examples how you can fail is that when you have a very tight meeting schedule, when you travel, then you can mix up your meetings. And I remember the time when I was in Germany and I've had to meet some bus producers, including the companies like Mercedes and MAN. And I mixed them, these two meetings, and they showed up on the Mercedes bus factory door on the wrong day and the wrong time. And then I realized that, oops, I have made a mistake and I don't have a meeting this day. But as I was there already, I was stubborn enough to say that I'm sorry, but I'm still here and maybe we can still have a meeting. And I was able to meet the purchasing manager of Mercedes bus. So it was a fail, but I kind of managed to fix it somehow. And I actually had a meeting. What is the attitude to the Ukrainian products in the European Union? It depends very much on the product. If you talk about IT, for example, then according to my experience, IT is a kind of universal, and the products from Ukraine or from Belarus, for example, they are very well received, and Ukrainian IT people and programmers are having a good reputation. Regarding the other types of things, Ukraine is known as a strong country for different metal products, food products. The only thing is that, yes, when you go to the, for example, European Union, you have to have all the needed certificates, which is sometimes quite difficult to get. But as soon you will have all these certificates and your products are compliant with the European regulations, then there should not be very big problems with that. You have to make sure that the packaging is correct and it's nice, because you have to compete with all the rest of the world, and they know very well how to package the things. Are the European countries afraid from the Ukrainian producers because of the political situation? If I look from Estonia, for example, then we are very sympathetic to Ukraine, and we rather buy products from Ukraine than maybe some other post-Soviet countries. So Ukraine is having quite a good reputation, at least from Baltic countries, but it always comes down to the product itself. In the end of the day, how does it have a high quality? Does it have a correct pricing? And what I would say is that don't go there and try to sell only the price. The price is the last thing you should put lower than the existing products. First, you have to make sure that the product is having good quality, and in order to do that, you have to do the proper market research and find out what are your competitors doing. So I will not see the big problems about goods being from Ukraine. How do you get your product noticed? Asks Farbad. I already mentioned that one good way to do it is to go to the exhibitions and trade fairs. And from my experience, for example, if I put up this slide in here, That was the time when I was working for the company EcoFleet, and that was one conference which also had a trade fair connected to it. So I was visiting these conferences 3 years in a row. First time I was just a participant. Second year I managed to get the stand in a trade show area, and because I was able to get well acquainted and talked a lot with the organizers of this conference and this trade show, I managed to make sure that I can speak, I have a good product, and I was able to become a speaker. And that's the key, that when you are able to be a speaker and be on stage doing the presentation to the all participants of this conference or the trade show, then of course you will be well visible. I was interviewed by the local radio and TV stations, and if you look at this little listing here where there were some other presenters, then the guy who was on stage right in front of me, that guy on the right where I put my pen at the moment, I hope you see that, this was the guy from TomTom, and TomTom probably is a much more known brand name than EcoFleet was at that time. And I made some jokes on the stage, not about the TomTom, but about our company. And because our company was much smaller than TomTom, then actually the message which the speak which I gave to the audience was even better understood. How to do business when you don't have millions and millions of customers and millions of dollars. And I was able to get a very good response. And right after that, I had a lineup on my stand, which was right in there at the same area. So the whole next day, I had a lineup with the potential customers who came to my booth and wanted to speak to me and make some kind of a deal. So that's a good example how to become well visible, but that takes years. It never happens on a first visit. So somebody's writing. Let's see what the question will be. Also, Farbod, there is one other possibility how to get noticed is that when you are able to join some official delegations which are coming from your country to visit some other country, and sometimes it's accompanied by some important people like some minister, or it's a governmental delegation. Very often they take business delegation with them, or there is your local sector association will organize a trip. Then when you go with the group, then it's also a little bit better possibilities to meet different possible partners or customers, because then the meetings are organized already for you by the association or some people who have already been there, and that gives you opportunity to meet during one trip already, to meet with 5 to 10 companies in the same area. Very often they arrange these called matchmaking sessions, where you can meet 20 companies in one day, chat with everybody around 5 to 10 minutes, and then you find that it seems interesting. Then you exchange your contacts and you continue on later on already on the details. So try to find out if there are organize trips to the other countries where you might think that could be your interest in the export market. Thank you, Tanya, for a good comment about trade missions. The local chamber of commerce is organizing them, as I said, the associations. And when you would like to make a deal with the governmental institutions of the other country, then you will have to make sure that you will be part of the government business delegations, which accompany some ministers or prime minister or sometimes even the president. For example, this was the visit of Estonian president to Croatia, where I was the part of the business delegations. And if you look at the picture, you can actually see my face. And this was our foreign minister, this was our minister of interior affairs, and this is minister of enterprise. So we had all these people together, and actually I made a presentation together with one of our ministers to the Minister of Interior Affairs in Croatia, so it was a unique opportunity also for that. Alexander asks, can you recommend a book on sales management? Yes, I can. I have written one, but unfortunately this is in Estonian. But of course, if you search the internet, yeah, there are definitely lots of different ones, and I really can't recommend only one of them. It depends what you can get, what you can find, but reading the books will never hurt. By the way, this book I have on the screen, Yes to the Export, is also available online. Of course, it's in Estonian, but it's in a PDF format. And if somebody can somehow translate it, then I would really recommend it, because it has tens and tens of different study cases about with different Estonian companies going to the different markets, and it has a lots of more like practical examples rather than just a theory. So that way I find it's actually the most useful way to explain to somebody how to go to the foreign markets, because the theory is always good, but if it doesn't have the practical examples, then it's like half of the truth only. You should always try to have practical examples next to it. How much time does it take to sign the first contract with a partner? There is no yes or no answers or answer that it always takes this much time. I have signed the contracts right after my first meeting, and I have signed contracts after 3 years of negotiations. So it depends. It depends on your product. Quite often it's not the matter of negotiations themselves, but it's the matter of adapting your product or your service to the market. And it's not just the packaging. Sometimes you have to change your whole product because the target market requirements or the ways they would like to consume or buy it are so much different from the ones which you have in your own country. So there is no answer that it takes at least 5 months. But I would say usually it takes few months to go through all the details to adapt the product and to make sure that this partner is the correct partner. So it's never a quick process. You should consider it takes months, definitely. There is a slide actually from my side also, which it's written from my own experience, some do's and don'ts. What support the customer relations, and it also applies for the exporting the goods and doing the business in foreign markets. So consider the region specifics and all the markets difference. So when you read it, you will see lots of interesting examples that you should consider if you go to the Middle East, that the religion, for example, that you can't be Shia Islam, or if you do the business in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, because it's led by the Sunnis, who are the different branch of the Muslim countries. That's important to know. The same in Balkan countries. Croatian can't be a business manager when you would like to also widen the business to Serbia or Macedonia, because Croatians are not very much welcomed in this part of the Balkan countries. So, and this knowledge always comes only via the conversations which you have with the local people. Otherwise, you don't know it. One good recommendation is don't give out the exclusivity to anybody in during the first meetings. Simply because sometimes it can be this way that the company you meet simply wants to block you out of the market because he knows some other competitors whose products are doing well and they can see you as a threat, and they just, if you give them the exclusivity, then they are tied to it and you are blocked away from the market. So exclusivity, I would say, can be given out only in the basis of time restrictions, meaning that you would should agree about some targets, how much he should sell during, let's say, the first 6 months, and if he reaches this target, then you can go on with the conversations about the exclusivity. But it's always based on certain amounts of goods sold or certain amounts of money made during these deals. Invite them to the joint dinner. Also very important, because after the official meeting, which is in the office, people are wearing their ties and they are very conservative. But when you go for a dinner in the evening and have some beer or some local schnapses, then the conversation will go much easier and they will tell you much more different details which you actually need and which are important. So it's also, this is important. And the last one, write director on your business card, because in very many countries, you are taken much more seriously. Although you might be not the director, you might be a project manager or just an export specialist. If you write that you are the director, then you will be sure that you will get these meetings you would like to do. How high is the level of trust in Ukrainian companies in Estonia? I can buy Ukrainian beer in basically every bigger food store, and nobody has a problem with it. We would probably buy the Ukrainian beer the same way I buy the Czech or the German beer. So I don't see any problems with that. And I have seen many different Ukrainian products on the shelves of Estonian shops. And I know people who do business with Ukrainian companies personally. So no problem with the brand of Ukrainian. how many languages do I know? I speak 5 languages, and that's always good thing. On top of that, what I always do is that when I go to the new country which I have not been before, I always learn at least 3 words in this language: hello, thank you, and goodbye. These you should know in every single language of the country you go. So 5 languages plus yes, thank you, goodbye, and hello. I always learn these 3 words. How about Ukrainian? My Ukrainian is kind of rusty, but I'm a kind of a older type of guy, and I was in Soviet army in Ukraine. So I was based in a city called Alexandria, and I spent 1.5 years in Ukraine during the Soviet times. So at that time I knew quite a lot. Now I don't know that so much anyway. About the Chernobyl. Yes, I was 500 kilometers south of the day where the Chernobyl nuclear station blew away, and I was in army at that exactly the same time, and I was the guy who had to send some soldiers to Chernobyl to clean up the mess. So I was very closely connected to the Chernobyl thing. Fortunately, my dembel came 2 months after that. I was flying home, and but until today, the Chernobyl is very well known. Of course, nobody is directly afraid of that so much anymore, because the cloud, the radiation cloud, went away 20 years ago, and this is not the problem anymore, at least from an Estonian point of view. But we all know about Chernobyl, and some of my friends have been there doing the movies about Chernobyl in Pripyat and in Chernobyl itself. So we know about Chernobyl quite well, but we are not afraid of it anymore. And we can buy Ukrainian watermelons and Ukrainian fruits. Nobody has the problem with that at the moment. So guys, we have spent now more than 2 hours online. I would say I will take 3 last questions if you have some. So who will be the 3 lucky ones? Please ask your questions, and I think then we'll have to wrap up with today's webinar. And you can ask about whatever you would like. Maybe I know the answers. By the way, it's important to know that cryptocurrency is not my cup of tea. Yes, I have heard about the existence of it, but I have never dealt with cryptocurrency myself, unfortunately. I put a slide up there which is about the networking. That strangely enough, emails are not the best way of communicating in some countries. especially when you go to Asia, to Japan or to China, for example, even in some countries in Europe, in order to get the answers from my customers who don't reply to the emails, I use one kind of the chats in my phone. I have basically 5 of them in here, starting from Facebook Messenger, from Viber. I use WhatsApp. I use the usual SMSs. So sometimes it's very useful to use these just for quick questions. So you don't have to write the long stories in the email, but please don't be afraid. If you see that it works, then use it. Nowadays, it's definitely okay, especially the younger generation. Everybody uses them. Do you use digital marketing for your clients? What do you mean by digital marketing? Of course, the platforms like Facebook and other ones are very much used nowadays. Can't ignore them. And Instagram, yes, of course. Of course, everybody uses them. If you have a product which is easily marketable via these channels, why not? And if you have a good Facebook page for your products, or you use the things like LinkedIn, for example, then let me see if I have a slide about it. Yes, for example, there are lots of things like this, as you just asked. The more professional way is to do it via LinkedIn, because that is the platform for the professionals, and which is also good when you put up some information in LinkedIn. For example, it's easy to check out who has looked at you. You can find via the job offers the possible employees to this country if you need some. And of course, the chat room is there as well, as in Facebook or in Twitter. That's okay. And there are different other things. I have put some examples in there as well. The questions about these presentations, I think I will definitely give this presentation to my colleagues here in Marketing Institute, and they are able to send it to you via the emails. And the question about the invitations for this webinar, we found out meanwhile that some of you didn't receive the invitations because sometimes they might end up in your junk mail, or some email systems block the emails which come from the computers, as the invitations were sent out from the computers. So please always check your trash and junk mailboxes, then you can find them in there. And this video, I must ask my colleagues. Kati, I have a question. Will this video be available also later on for reviewing for the participants? It will be available from next week, as much I just heard from the Marketing Institute people. Thank you. Okay, I think the 3 last questions are over, and we should wrap up. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much for listening. We still have 35 people online, and hopefully next meetings will have even more people. Thank you very much. Bye bye, and good luck with your export operations. Wish you good travels, and don't be afraid of going to the different countries. This is always something interesting to find, and hopefully it will end up with a good business as well. Thank you.